someone could have in size 38 font the name at the very top in red, and then another one in black, and then a couple lines in black with their contact details, and then
Hi, Sanches. Thanks for joining this podcast. This podcast was primarily um, designed as a way of expressing as a bystander, where people to promote, create content, and help others also to create content rather than consuming content. That was the initial thought. You can start with a bit of introduction, and then we'll take this ball rolling.
yeah, thank you very much, Rags. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I don't go by too many names. Sanchez is it primarily, really, but yeah, I'm Sanches Clarke. I'm a recruiter in the agile space, I guess. One of the few that probably get it to a degree that people really enjoy and understand and can just really work well with. So yeah, that's a very, very brief introduction into what I do.
Great. Thank you so much. When we met last time, we over a coffee, we were discussing on two different topics around what is happening in the hiring space. Then we thought, why not we record it and share with the community? Because many of us are also looking for some roles, some of us are hiring, and in between all the other members in the community, right? So let's start with what I mean. Suddenly, I'm sure all of us have observed that agile coach roles have been kind of less, there are less available open roles.
Mhm.
So, what is your observation so far, and what trends you see in the coming few months?
Yeah, I think with agile coach positions, like many other senior positions across the tech and digital landscape period, they've been less prevalent over the last 12, 18 months. They just simply have been. A lot of businesses have been feeling the effects of the economic downturn. A lot of businesses have been making rounds and rounds of redundancies over the last 12, 18 months. And with that, I think you'll see that a business's focus is not necessarily going to be on how to optimize and make the most of with their current workforce or even invest in making their current workforce better. It's been more about how do we kind of cut costs, how do we shrink down, how do we just keep the ship steady rather than focusing on how to really take off. I think with that, like we've seen that senior roles have been less prevalent and agile coach roles or more strategic positions have been less prevalent as well. Um, I feel though that it is switching. There's a lot of businesses and clients that I speak with that have been in that position where they've been on that kind of slow and steady for the last 3, 6, 8 months. And
Mhm.
now it's more about how can we really optimize in terms of how we approach agile on my side and obviously the wider delivery and product focus.
Yeah. And compared to what it was like, especially from a hiring manager point of view, it's kind of expectation. Have you seen a change in terms of what they used to look for and what is the new expectation in the current scenario?
Yeah, absolutely. The I think hiring managers have become more picky,
Mhm.
for lack of a better word, purely because there's more candidates in the market.
Yeah.
Right now, and for probably the last 10 months or so, it's been a buyer's market where there's an abundance of great talent in the market. So it almost makes sense to not really to have a higher expectation. There's better people in the market.
Right.
There's lots of applications. The second you post something, you're going to get 200 people. There's going to be some really good ones in there. But I think on top of kind of being a little bit more choosy about what they can get, the focus in terms of what businesses are actually looking for has definitely shifted as well. So it's not just that um, businesses aren't necessarily in a place now, or the majority of businesses that have gone through these agile transformations or digital transformation to some degree, they don't need people that will just be doing the fundamentals or the basics when it comes to being a scrum master, even the basics of agile coaching on a team level. They don't
Right.
really need that anymore. A lot of businesses have had that to some degree, and I think we're also seeing that the kind of digital landscape in terms of the teams that are working to deliver these products have actually been working in Agile for a long time now.
Right.
So when it comes to someone that can set up ceremonies and introduce Agile ways of working for the first time, get people working in Scrum for the first time, like there's a lot of businesses that just don't have the need for that anymore.
Right.
And I think with that, I think Scrum Masters, Agile coaches, even delivery managers that have been providing that service over the last six to 8 years, their skill set for a large proportion have become quite stagnated, because it was go into this business and introduce Scrum and make sure that the ceremonies are being or events are being carried out properly, and kind of track velocity, track your kind of burn downs, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Like there's businesses that can't really see, that have been allowing that for a long time and haven't necessarily seen the return on investment. And I think that's why we've now seen a huge downturn in terms of Agile in businesses. And I think
Okay.
that, coupled with the economic issues, is the reason why Agile is sometimes one of the first things that are looked at, because it's very difficult to see the return on investment with the style that Agile's kind of been brought to businesses in over the last 6 to 8 years. Very long-winded answer. I
No,
hope
I
that made
agree
sense.
with you. There are a couple of things. What I also observed is in the last over many years, many organizations also invested in developing their own internal capability. So many of us, when we set up an agile transformation, we ensure that their internal teams are trained, coached, and develop their own skill set. So I'm sure there's enough capacity within the organizations to absorb some of those roles being made redundant. At the same time, also, I also see that some of the organizations, they did not do it in the right way, so did not see the benefits. So when there is no benefit, there is no trust. So maybe they're trying to look for something new, new solution or a few new ways of working. I think that's good. And coupled with this economic downturn, I think definitely has an impact. Coming back to CV, something as a recruiter, first thing when you see, right, there are something which suddenly puts you off, like maybe it will go to the left or whatever. So can you share a little bit your experience on the first impression, like as a recruiter, what the first few things you look in the CV?
It's literally on the face of it, before you even look at any kind of content, right? It's, how does it actually look? How does it feel when when you open that page? Because it's going to come up, and you actually have quite an emotive response to the way that you receive information, right? So someone could have in size 38 font the name at the very top in red, and then another one in black, and then a couple lines in black with their contact details, and then a huge summary like that, a big paragraph to read straight away. And I think the main advice that I always give is to keep your CV as standardized as possible. You want it as black and white as possible, because that way you're alleviating the chance of there being any kind of bias. Because a hiring manager might like colors, which is great, but equally, if there's a lot of colors going on, then, and they are someone that likes to keep it nice and straightforward and standardized again, then chances are there's more that will prefer the standardized form. Because when you're looking at the amount of the sheer volume that hiring managers have to go through, you want to take away the kind of cognitive load of having to read a CV. And one of the main ways of doing that is to just keep it very plain, very simple. So I always advise having multiple versions of your CV, in terms of, here's a standardized format. That's also good for the ATSs, but we'll obviously get onto that. But here is a version that might show my personality a bit more, might show my flair a bit more, but I will save that for someone that already has an understanding of where I'm coming from, maybe if it's a referral or it's a previously known contact, then you won't be you won't fall subject to that natural, or whether it's conscious or unconscious bias. You're less likely to fall victim to it if they already know you. But if they don't know you and you're simply an applicant, then you want to keep that as standardized as possible, because that's going to make it more readable.
Very good, very good. I think very good point, in fact. So the message is just keep it simple, and that it's also there is an emotive reaction first time when person sees that. So let's not make them either like it or dislike it completely.
Yeah,
Just make it neutral.
exactly. You want to keep it as neutral. It sounds
Yeah.
boring, but black and white, white, gray. Like keep it that, because it's very difficult to judge someone in any kind of way if everything is standardized, right? It's the same way if a client would ask me for a anonymized would ask me for a diverse shortlist
Right.
to make sure that we're covering a broad range in terms
Correct.
of gender, ethnicity, everything like that, then we'd be able to anonymize those CVs to get rid
Right.
of that bias. So then they're not like, oh, we've got too many men, or we've got too many women, or there's not enough people from an ethnic background.
Right.
If the CVs are anonymized, if the locations are anonymized on the CV, then there's no way for you to infer that information. So likewise, if you've got all of your info on that CV nice and standardized, it's lesser likely that someone will be able to make a preconceived kind of judgment about yourself.
Very nice, very interesting. And also next, coming back to one is it's more like, I think, keep it simple. Then also some, I'll say, common mistakes you quite often you come across. Can you share a few?
Yeah, this one, I think the biggest one is people probably know this already, but I still see CVs to this day that look like they've taken a JD for their most previous role, or for each role that's on their CV, and they've almost copy and pasted what the job responsibilities and expectations of that role are, and put that into their CV. It's by and far the worst thing you can do, because it's the for the most part, the responsibilities that you have in that role, whoever is hiring you will understand what kind of responsibilities you should have. If there's anything that's outside of the norm, for example, ahead of delivery, for example, if there's any responsibilities that would fall outside of the usual head of delivery remit, then by all means add it in there. If you had some sort of responsibility that was kind of like added on, or that you gained throughout your time in that role. But the ultimate thing to have there is achievements. So achievements over responsibilities, because everyone can be responsible for the same thing in a role. And chances are, if everyone's applying for the same level of role as you, as any other applicant would be, they will have similar histories with similar responsibilities. The difference between you and the person that's also applied is what you've achieved in those roles. And that is ultimately what you're going to be judged on. And if you've got someone that has explained everything they've achieved versus someone that's explained what they were responsible for, but not necessarily what they've achieved, again, going back to the cognitive load, which one's an easier decision to make? Even if this person who didn't explain what they achieved more, you don't know that. And the hiring manager will always go with a line of least resistance. And for the most part, even recruiters do. Obviously, the good ones will make sure they get that information out. That's what we do. Like we make sure we have these conversations so we can pull that information out. But if you're not going in via recruiter, which a lot of roles out there aren't currently going to agencies because there's a lot of candidates, you need to make sure that it's as easy as possible for an internal TA or a hiring manager to see exactly what you've achieved in those roles.
Very nice. Thank you so much. Also, a quick note on ATS, because there is also, I don't know how much is true or how much is a kind of a misconception. There is always that notion that your CV should fit to ATS. I just wanted to understand how the whole thing about ATS works, and some do's and don'ts.
So yeah, I think this is a big one. It's not an exact science. There's things that some people will experience that others won't. and it's completely dependent on the type of ATS, how it's coded, what file types are compatible with it, and what formats are compatible with the systems that it's called parsing information. So it will basically read the document for us, pick out the right bits using AI and that sort of technology, and then translate it into some sort of form. There will be times when I do this pretty more or less every single day. So I will speak to a candidate, have their CV, maybe they've sent it to me via email or something like that. I'll put drag and drop their CV over into our CMS system. We use something called Bullhorn. No, like it's like much of a muchness for the most part, but sometimes it will pull through incorrect information. Sometimes it will put a job title as a location, for example.
Okay.
It's not to say that the ATS is bad, right?
Mhm.
But if you are applying to 4 or 5 different roles and they're using different ATS systems, then the thing that you can control is what the format of your CV is. For
Mhm.
example, if I've got a Word document and every single job is inside a text box, and I've got different columns of information going up and down the CV. You often see people have like skills and other kind of like key info down the side, so
Mhm.
then they can squeeze information into here, so then they can make it 2 pages long.
Mhm.
I don't know where the 2-page thing came from, but I get it because you want it to be short. But again, thinking of the readability, you want it to be easy to read. A lot of the times when it's 2 pages and you've got 15 years of experience, you have to drop the font to about 8 so you can actually squeeze everything in. And it's not, I think you have to think about the readability again.
Yeah.
But looping back to the ATS, the only thing you can control is the format of your CV. You can't
Mhm.
control if it's read or not, because
Okay.
it will vary depending on what ATS system, and you're probably not going to have too much awareness or knowledge of which ATSs work in which way. So the best way to give yourself the best chance is to, again, have a standardized version. So I say this, I've say standardized a lot, but the idea is you keep it. I think what works best is a Word document, no images, no tables if you can avoid it,
Mhm.
and no sort of like lines, or I don't even know what to call this, but there's a thing where it will have like a little arrow,
Mhm.
and you can almost do like a drop down. So again, like sometimes people will
Yeah.
do that to save space, so
Mhm.
you can collapse it or stuff
Okay.
like that.
Right.
Those are the sort of things that will usually affect whether the ATS can pull across that information correctly.
Okay.
And as everyone probably knows, like it could actually be the difference between you landing a role or not, because a lot of ATS systems now will grade a profile based on the job description versus how much info can be picked up from the actual CV.
Mhm.
So that's another point. Like you want to make sure that you make sure you mention some of the right words. Like I
Mhm.
know we don't want to get into the whole buzzword bingo, but
Yeah.
you can't have no mention of a fundamental skill just
Right.
because you've got a lot of experience. You know what I mean? So you want to make sure that you've got your experience in your CV. Like that's pretty standard, but that's something as well.
Right. Good. In fact, about the keywords, one of my friends used to joke at the end of the CV, maybe just put all the keywords and tell that I don't have experience in the following.
You know what? There's a gentleman that I vividly remember. I won't say a name, but I know he basically done exactly that, but he made the font white so you couldn't
Mhm.
actually see it. But
Oh,
it didn't, this was back in my early days of recruitment when I'd do any kind of tech, and it didn't matter what role I searched for, whether it was a technical architect, a data engineer, a front end or a back end developer, like anything, he would always be at the top of the list. And I
wow.
was like, who is this guy? He can do everything. But obviously don't do that. That's not advice. But equally, like it does, there is a big portion of that, the kind of AI taking over the recruitment process to a degree, right? Because
Right.
but in the end of the day, you you don't, as long as you're not over egging your ability, and kind of saying I'm an expert in X, and really and truly you've used it once or twice. It's quite a common sense thing, right? You're not gonna plaster something on your CV when you have no experience of it, because you're just gonna come unstuck throughout the interview process when you ultimately get asked those questions.
Right. And ultimately, it's not just even the landing the role, right? You need to deliver once you take the role also.
Exactly.
Just to coming back to this ATS thing, just I was just thinking like when you upload CV, sometimes it says fill the application using your CV. That option is there, no? So sometimes when I upload, I see a lot of details are picked up automatically. In some systems, it will not. So is that an indicator that the CV is rightly formatted to some level of ATS requirements when it
Uh,
automatically picks up all the data?
yeah, I would say so. I would say that's a good sign, and it'd be interesting. Obviously, it's tricky to experiment, because obviously you're looking for a role because you want to get one, so you don't want to experiment too much. But it would be interesting to see the difference between what information gets pulled out based on the format of the CV.
Mhm.
That's something that I could actually actively kind of look at and assess as well.
Mhm.
But again, I can only do it based on the ATS system that we use, and they will be different. But I think it's generally a good sign, if it is pulling through that information. But
Yeah, because
my
I
advice
made,
would,
sorry, means I made some change. Earlier, I used to have role, then the company name, and what time. I used to see that ATS used to maybe change a little bit. So
mm,
now the standard which I use is first the company name, then the role, then
mm.
from what time to what time.
And you found
So
that made a difference.
yeah,
Nice.
so that's the thing.
This is the thing, like, no, I would never be able to advise that, but in terms of like the thing I was about to say, just in terms of when you're uploading your CV, like, even if you do the drop down and then it says you'll be able to, and it pre-populates, that's great. But then always just double check what information is actually going in there,
Yeah.
because it might pull through the correct information in regards to some of the jobs, but then it might have the wrong location, or it might pull out the wrong responsibilities or achievements for each role. Yeah, so to
Okay.
just be always double check is my advice there.
And other question I had was since we're already uploading CV, sometimes candidates may not fill all the details, but is it advisable to fill all those details in those boxes when in their system and then also attach a CV? Because what is the first thing the hiring team will look at? Whether they look at those all the boxes first or
Um, I think it varies. I think it varies. Not all ATS systems will use the kind of matching
Mhm.
algorithm where it will grade the profile based on comparison to the JD, but um, you can't really say. I think as long as you've got your CV uploaded and the information that's gone on there is correct, that's the
Okay.
only way to. That's all you can control, right?
Right.
So again, it's like focus on what you can control. How
Yeah.
a hiring manager looks at it now, or how this internal TA looks at it, can be completely different. So as long as you're doing your bit, that's all you can do.
Perfect. I think this is good, very good. I think we're almost like coming to our end of this. Means the key point which I can take away from this is keep things simple and then
Absolutely.
don't try to game the system. Just do what best you can do, and also understand the role and the job description,
Mm.
and bring your experience in terms of what has been accomplished rather than what are the responsibilities you're supposed to handle.
100%.
Because yeah, that's very
100%.
good.
That was a
Awesome.
that was a very succinct summary, mate.
Good. Any other closing remarks to the people, especially who are looking for new roles, something which you want to share? You can share that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there's a lot of negativity around just the job market right now, and I think it's with good good reason, because it's been the toughest recruitment job market that we've ever had ever. I'm pretty sure. I'm happy to go on record and say that, because I don't think it's ever been tougher. Even people that have been around in the recruitment game for 20 plus years and have been through an actual economic crash back in 2008, 2009, it still wasn't as bad as it is now. We are at the back end of it, which is fantastic. But it's going to be a bit slow and steady, but we're going in the right trajectory right now. Whereas in the previous, I don't know, three or 4 months, I couldn't really say that the trajectory was upwards. It was flattened. It wasn't going down now, which is great, but we was kind of plateaued at the start of the year. But we're now starting to see that we're going upwards, which is a really promising sign. So key advice is have a standardized format of your CV. Keep it nice and plain Jane, just to please the ATSs, to please any hiring managers, to please recruiters. Think about readability over the actual information. Like it's more important that the info that you're trying to get across can get across, rather than having absolutely everything that you've ever done before. So yeah, just keep it succinct, keep it to the point, keep it simple. It's probably quite a lot, but this is why getting a good CV is difficult, but always happy to help people out with writing those.
Very good. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time, and appreciate your comments and the suggestions, and hope our listeners will enjoy this. Thank you so much.
Really appreciate that, Rex. Thanks for having me.